The coffee in my cup had grown cold, but I couldn't bring myself to take another sip. Across from me, my sister Olivia beamed, her perfectly manicured hand resting on my husband's arm. The diamond ring on her finger caught the light, mocking me with each subtle movement. "I know this is a shock, Melanie," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "But sometimes love just happens." I studied Jason's face, searching for any sign of the man I'd married 5 years ago, the man who had whispered forever against my skin countless times. His eyes met mine briefly before darting away, a silent message passing between us that Olivia couldn't possibly understand. "Of course," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Love just happens." Under the table, my phone vibrated with a new message. I knew who it was from without looking. "If you need time," Jason offered, his voice carefully measured, "we understand. This isn't how we wanted to tell you." I almost laughed at the irony of his words. "This isn't how we wanted to tell you." As if there were a proper way to announce you were leaving your wife for her sister. "How long?" I asked, the question hanging in the air between us. Olivia shifted uncomfortably. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me," I insisted, my gaze fixed on Jason. "Play your part," my eyes silently urged him. "Remember what we discussed." 3 months, he answered, the lie rolling easily off his tongue. The truth was messier, more complicated. But Olivia didn't need to know that. Neither did anyone else. I nodded slowly, allowing tears to well in my eyes. It wasn't difficult to summon them. This charade was painful, even if the betrayal wasn't quite what it appeared to be. "I should go," I said, rising from the table. "I need time to process this." "Mel," Olivia called after me, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. "I never meant to hurt you." I turned back, offering her a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Yet here we are. Outside the restaurant, I finally checked my phone. From Jason, "Meet me at our place. 11 p.m. Did she buy it?" I typed back, hook, line, and sinker. "See you tonight." As I drove away, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. Not tears of heartbreak, but of grim satisfaction. Olivia thought she had one, that she had finally taken something precious from me. She had no idea what she'd actually done, or what I was capable of. "This is just the beginning," I thought as I headed home to prepare for what came next. Let the game begin. Olivia had always been the pretty one. I remembered watching her preen in front of the mirror when we were teenagers, her golden hair catching the light, her delicate features arranged in perfect symmetry. I was the smart one, the responsible one, the one our parents counted on. Olivia was the one everyone else wanted. Including Jason, apparently. At least, that's what she believed. I examined my reflection in the bedroom mirror, taking stock of the woman staring back at me. At 35, I was still attractive, dark hair falling in waves past my shoulders, green eyes that Jason once said reminded him of forest glades. But I wasn't Olivia, with her effortless beauty and charming laugh. I wasn't the woman who could enter a room and immediately become its center. The woman who had been stealing from our family business for years. The woman who had no idea that her new fiancé was still very much involved with his wife. I checked my watch, 9:45 p.m. I had just enough time to prepare for my meeting with Jason. Opening the safe hidden behind my grandmother's painting, I removed the encrypted flash drive that contained everything we needed. Bank statements, transfer records, emails, all the evidence of Olivia's systematic embezzlement from the company our parents had built from nothing. The company they had left to both of us, trusting Olivia's financial expertise while I handled operations. The company she had been quietly bleeding dry for at least 3 years. My phone rang, Mom's number flashing on the screen. "Melanie, honey, are you okay?" Her voice was thick with concern. "Olivia just called us. We're shocked, we had no idea she and Jason were." "It's fine, Mom," I interrupted, not wanting to hear her say it out loud. "Really? These things happen. But your own sister. And after everything you've been through. Oh, darling, your father and I are so sorry." I closed my eyes, letting her sympathy wash over me. My parents' concern was genuine, their outrage on my behalf real. They had no idea that their precious younger daughter, the light of their lives, had been stealing from them for years. "I'll be okay," I assured her. "I just need some time." After hanging up, I looked at the flash drive in my hand. Time was precisely what we needed, time to gather the remaining evidence, time to set our plan in motion, time to ensure that when Olivia finally fell, she would fall hard. At precisely 11 p.m., I arrived at the old boathouse by the lake. It had been in my family for generations, a place where Olivia and I had spent summers as children. Now it served a different purpose, a meeting place where Jason and I could speak freely, away from prying eyes and listening ears. He was already there, pacing anxiously across the worn wooden floor. "How did it go after I left?" I asked, closing the door behind me. Jason ran a hand through his hair, looking haunted. "She's ecstatic. Keeps talking about how happy we'll be, how she's finally won." "Won what?" I scoffed. "Me? You? The imaginary competition she's been having with me since we were children?" "All of it," he said, pulling me into his arms. "I hate this, Mel. Lying to her, pretending I'm in love with her." I stepped back, studying his face. "Having second thoughts?" "No," he said firmly. "Not about exposing her. She deserves everything that's coming. But sometimes when I'm with her, playing this role, I feel like I'm losing myself." I understood his concern. Jason had never been a good liar, it was one of the things I loved most about him. His honesty, his integrity. Asking him to participate in this deception had been my idea, not his. "It won't be much longer," I promised, retrieving the flash drive from my pocket. "I found something new. Proof that she's been falsifying board documents, authorized payments to shell companies. She's gotten careless." Jason inserted the drive into his laptop, his expression hardening as he reviewed the new evidence. "Jesus, Mel. There's over $500,000 missing here." "I know. And that's just what I've been able to track so far. Who knows how much more she's taken?" He closed the laptop, turning to face me. "How much longer do we need to keep this up? The engagement charade?" "Until the audit is complete," I said. "Once we have the full picture of what she's done, we can take everything to the board, and to the police." Jason nodded, pulling me close again. "I miss you," he whispered against my hair. "I miss sleeping next to you, waking up with you. This house is empty without you." I leaned into his embrace, allowing myself to draw strength from his warmth. "I know. I miss you too. But this is the only way. If Olivia suspected we were still together, still working together, she'd never let her guard down. She's convinced that she's finally beaten you," he said. "You should hear how she talks about you when you're not around." Part of me didn't want to know, but another part, the part that had endured Olivia's subtle cruelties since childhood, needed to hear it. "Tell me." Jason hesitated. "She says you've always been jealous of her. That you tried to keep me away from her, that you somehow knew there was a connection between us from the moment we met. A connection, I repeated bitterly. Is that what she calls it? Mel, Jason's voice softened. You know none of that is true. From the first moment I saw you, not her, I knew you were the one I wanted to spend my life with. I nodded, fighting back unexpected tears. I know. I just hate that she's always seen me as competition. That she's always tried to take what's mine. Including the company, Jason added grimly. Especially the company, I agreed. But not anymore. Not when we're done. We spent the next hour strategizing, reviewing the evidence, planning our next steps. When it was time to leave, Jason pulled me into one last embrace. I love you, he said fiercely. Never doubt that. No matter what happens, no matter what I have to say or do to keep up this charade, I love you. I know, I whispered back. I love you too. As I drove home to my empty apartment, the temporary place I'd rented to maintain our separation facade, I couldn't help but think about the expression on Olivia's face when she'd told me about her engagement to Jason. The triumph in her eyes, the barely concealed satisfaction of having finally taken something she believed I treasured above all else. She had no idea that in attempting to steal my husband, she had set in motion her own downfall. And for the first time since discovering her betrayal, of me, of our parents, of the company we were meant to protect together, I felt a cold sense of satisfaction. Olivia had always wanted to win. Soon, she would learn what it truly meant to lose. The following week passed in a blur of pretense. I played my role to perfection, the wounded wife, the betrayed sister, the woman struggling to hold herself together in the face of unimaginable pain. In reality, my days were filled with meticulous investigation, carefully documenting every fraudulent transaction, every falsified record, every penny Olivia had stolen. My nights, however, belonged to Jason. Secret meetings at the boathouse, encrypted messages, brief moments stolen in parking garages and out-of-the-way cafes where no one would recognize us. It was exhausting, this double life, but necessary. Olivia, meanwhile, was reveling in her perceived victory. She called incessantly, ostensibly to check on me, but really to subtly twist the knife. I think fall would be perfect for the wedding, she gushed during one such call, as if discussing the season for her wedding to my husband was a perfectly normal conversation to have with me. Jason thinks so too. We're thinking October, perhaps at the vineyard. Wouldn't that be lovely, Mel? I made a non-committal sound, adding another tally to my mental count of the times she'd casually mentioned Jason's name in our conversation. 17 so far, and we were only 10 minutes in. I hope by then you'll feel better about everything, she continued, her voice dripping with false concern. It would mean so much to have you there. At your wedding to my husband? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. I'll have to check my calendar. Olivia sighed dramatically. He's not your husband anymore, Mel. The divorce will be final well before the wedding. I just thought, well, we're still sisters. Nothing should change that. I bit back the retort that rose to my lips. Nothing except you stealing my husband, you mean? Instead, I forced myself to remain calm. I need to go, Olivia. I have a meeting. Oh? With who? Her interest was immediate, suspicious. Not that financial investigator you mentioned hiring for the company review? And there it was, the real reason for her call. Not to torture me with wedding plans, but to determine how close we were to uncovering her theft. No, a therapy appointment, actually, I lied smoothly. Apparently, it's not easy to process your sister sleeping with your husband. Olivia had the grace to sound slightly abashed. Mel, I'm sorry it happened this way. But you have to understand, what Jason and I have, it's real. It's magical. Sometimes love just happens. Yes, you've mentioned that. I ended the call before she could respond, my hands shaking with suppressed rage. Jason called moments later. She just called me, he said without preamble. Asking about some financial investigator you supposedly hired? She sounded nervous. Good, I replied. She should be. She called me too, fishing for information while pretending to discuss wedding plans. Wedding plans, Jason echoed, sounding pained. Christ, she's already talking caterers and venues. It's like she thinks this is real. For her, it is, I reminded him. Remember, she has no idea that you know about the embezzlement. As far as she's concerned, you're her besotted fiancé, rescued from a loveless marriage to her boring older sister. There was never anything loveless about our marriage, Jason said fiercely. I know that. But it's the narrative she's created. I sighed, rubbing my temples where a headache was beginning to form. How are things at the office? Jason worked as the chief legal counsel for our family company, a position that gave him access to financial records that might otherwise have been difficult to obtain. The audit team found another discrepancy today, he said, his voice dropping to a lower register. A major one. Almost $200,000 transferred to an account in the Cayman Islands. The paperwork has Olivia's signature all over it. My breath caught. Do you have copies? Better. I have the originals. She tried to replace them with forgeries, but she wasn't quick enough. This could be it, Jason, I said, excitement building despite my exhaustion. This could be the piece we need to take to the board. Not quite yet, he cautioned. We still need to establish a clear pattern, show that this wasn't a one-time thing. The more evidence we have, the stronger our case. He was right, of course. We needed to be thorough, methodical. One missing document, one unexplained transaction wouldn't be enough to bring down someone as charming and well-connected as Olivia. Meet me tonight, he asked. The usual place? I can't, I said reluctantly. Mom invited me to dinner. She's worried about me, obviously. I need to put in an appearance, maintain the heartbroken sister act. Tomorrow then, he suggested. I miss you, Mel. I miss you too, I replied softly. This will all be over soon. After ending the call, I spent an hour preparing for dinner with my mother. The right clothes, something somber, but not too depressing. Light makeup to cover the dark circles under my eyes, but not enough to look like I was trying too hard. The perfect balance of I'm struggling but surviving. My mother was waiting at our usual restaurant, her face lighting up with relief when she saw me. Melanie, darling, she embraced me tightly. I've been so worried. I'm okay, Mom, I assured her, sliding into the booth across from her. Really? She studied my face carefully. You look tired. I haven't been sleeping well, I admitted. This, at least, wasn't a lie. Of course you haven't, she sked sympathetically. What Olivia did, what both of them did, it's unconscionable. I nodded, accepting the waiter's offer of wine with perhaps more enthusiasm than was strictly dignified. Have you spoken to her? Mom asked cautiously. Olivia? Yes, she calls regularly. Usually to talk about wedding plans. Mom blanched. Oh, honey. That's cruel? Insensitive? Typically Olivia? I supplied, taking a generous sip of my wine. I was going to say thoughtless, but yes, all of those things. Mom reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Your father and I were just shocked. We never imagined Olivia would do something like this. If you only knew, I thought grimly. How is Dad? I asked, changing the subject. Still having those headaches? Oh, he's fine, Mom waved a dismissive hand. You know your father works too hard, sleeps too little. He wanted to come tonight, but he had a board meeting. The mention of the board sent a jolt of anxiety through me. The quarterly review? Yes, that's the one. He mentioned something about a financial audit as well? Something you initiated? I maintained a neutral expression, though my pulse quickened. Just standard procedure. It's been a few years since our last comprehensive review. Mom nodded, though she looked slightly puzzled. Olivia seemed rather upset about it when I mentioned it to her. Said it was unnecessary, a waste of resources. Did she? I forced a smile. Well, you know Olivia, always concerned about efficiency. And covering her tracks, I added silently. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of small talk and carefully avoided subjects. By the time we parted ways, I felt drained, the constant performance taking its toll. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. Your father was asking questions about the audit today. Olivia was in his office for almost an hour before the board meeting. She looked upset when she left. My stomach tightened. Olivia was getting nervous, which meant she might start taking risks. Making mistakes. Or worse, covering her tracks more effectively. We need to move up our timeline, I texted back. Tomorrow night. Bring everything you have. His response was immediate, I'll be there. Be careful, Mel. She's starting to panic. I put down my phone, hands tightening on the steering wheel. Olivia panicking was exactly what we needed, and exactly what we feared. My sister had always been dangerous when cornered. And right now, though she didn't fully realize it yet, she was most definitely cornered. The next day at the office was a study in tension. Olivia arrived late, her usually impeccable appearance slightly disheveled. She barked orders at her assistant, avoided the accounting department entirely, and spent an unusual amount of time behind closed doors in her office. I observed it all from a careful distance, maintaining my own routine while keeping tabs on her movements. Around noon, I watched as she slipped into the records room, emerging 20 minutes later with a large envelope clutched to her chest. My phone buzzed softly. She's removing evidence, Jason's text read. I've already made copies of everything in that room. Meet me at lunch? I glanced toward Olivia's office, where the blinds were now firmly closed. Can't risk it, I replied. She's watching me too closely. Tonight. The hours crawled by, each minute stretching into what felt like hours. By the time I could reasonably leave for the day, my nerves were frayed to the breaking point. As I was gathering my things, Olivia appeared in my doorway. Working late again, she asked, her tone deceptively casual. Just finishing up some things, I replied, not meeting her eyes. Big presentation tomorrow. She stepped into my office, closing the door behind her. You've been different lately. I looked up, one eyebrow raised. Different how? I don't know, calmer, I guess. More accepting. She tilted her head, studying me. It's a little unsettling, actually. What did you expect, Olivia? That I'd fall apart completely? That I'd never recover from your betrayal? No, of course not. She waved a dismissive hand. It's just, you've always been so emotional about everything. Remember when Dad gave me the convertible for my 16th birthday, and you got that old station wagon? You cried for days. I stared at her, dumbfounded by her ability to rewrite history. That's not what happened, Olivia. I didn't cry because of the car. I cried because when I tried to talk to Dad about how unfair it was, he told me that you needed the confidence boost more than I did. Olivia shrugged, unmoved by the correction. Well, he was right, wasn't he? You were always so self-assured, so certain of your place. I never had that. Is that how you justify it? Stealing my husband? Stealing from the company? Because poor little Olivia never felt special enough? The words escaped before I could stop them, a dangerous slip in my carefully maintained facade. Olivia's expression shifted, her eyes narrowing. Stealing from the company? What are you talking about? I backpedaled quickly. The audit, Olivia. Dad mentioned it at dinner with Mom. You know, the one you tried to convince him was unnecessary? Relief flickered across her face, so brief I almost missed it. That's just fiscal responsibility, Mel. We don't need to waste money on an external audit when our internal processes are sound. Interesting stance for our CFO, I noted, my voice cool. Most financial officers welcome external validation of their work. Are you questioning my competence? A dangerous edge had entered her voice. Not at all, I assured her, gathering my bag. Just making an observation. As I moved to leave, she blocked my path. I know what you're doing, Melanie, she said softly. Trying to turn people against me. Spreading doubts about my abilities. It won't work. I met her gaze steadily. I'm not doing anything, Olivia. If people are doubting you, perhaps you should ask yourself why. With that, I stepped around her and walked out, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain she could hear it. Outside, I ducked into the first coffee shop I found, ordering a drink I didn't want just to have a reason to sit. My hands shook as I typed out a message to Jason. She knows something's up. Meet me at the boathouse as soon as you can. We need to accelerate everything. 20 minutes later, I was driving toward the lake, my mind racing with contingency plans. If Olivia suspected we were onto her financial fraud, she might take drastic action, destroying evidence, creating false trails, even fleeing the country if she thought criminal charges were imminent. Jason's car was already parked in the hidden spot we'd agreed upon, a quarter-mile from the boathouse itself. We always arrived separately, parked in different locations, approached from different directions. Paranoid, perhaps, but necessary. He was pacing when I entered, his face drawn with worry. She came to my office after you left, he said without preamble. Asked me if I thought you were acting strangely. If I'd noticed anything concerning about your behavior lately. What did you tell her? That I hadn't noticed anything unusual. That you seemed to be handling our situation with remarkable grace. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I recognized from years of marriage. She didn't believe me. Said she thought you might be having some kind of breakdown, that you'd made strange accusations. She's trying to discredit me, I said quietly. Get ahead of whatever she thinks I might know. Mel, Jason's voice was grave. I think she's planning something big. When she left my office, she made a call. I couldn't hear much, but she mentioned moving up a timeline, needing access to accounts immediately. My blood ran cold. She's going to clean out whatever's left. That's my guess. We need to move now, Mel. Tonight. I shook my head. We still don't have enough. The board needs irrefutable proof, not just suspicions and a few questionable transactions. Then we get it. Jason pulled out his laptop. Tonight. For the next several hours, we combed through every document, every record, every piece of evidence we'd gathered. Jason had been more thorough than I realized, compiling a damning portfolio of Olivia's financial misdeeds spanning nearly 4 years. She started small, he noted, pointing to a series of transactions from early in her tenure as CFO. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Always to the same holding company. Blue Horizon Partners, I read from the screen. That sounds familiar. It should. It's registered to a Cayman Islands address, but the beneficial owner? He clicked to another document. One Olivia Marie Marshall. My maiden name. Our maiden name. She didn't even bother to hide it? I was incredulous. She was careful at first, but got sloppier over time. More confident. The amounts got bigger, the transfers more frequent. In the last year alone, she's diverted nearly $800,000. I sat back, stunned by the magnitude of her theft. Our parents trusted her. The board trusted her. I trusted her. And she betrayed all of you, Jason said grimly. But we have her now, Mel. This is enough to go to the board, to the authorities. I nodded slowly, the reality of what we were about to do sinking in. She'll go to prison. Our parents. Your parents deserve to know the truth, Jason said gently. About all of it. You're right. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. We take this to Dad first thing tomorrow. As chairman of the board, he needs to be the first to know. Jason nodded, closing his laptop. I'll prepare a formal presentation. All the evidence, clearly laid out. There'll be no room for doubt. I leaned against him, suddenly exhausted. And what about us? When do we reveal that part of the truth? After, he said firmly. Once Olivia is exposed, once the dust settles, we can explain why we did what we did. They may never forgive us for the deception, I warned. Maybe not. But they'll understand why it was necessary. He kissed the top of my head. One battle at a time, Mel. As we gathered our things, preparing to leave separately as always, a sound outside made us both freeze. A car door closing, footsteps approaching. Jason moved to the window, cautiously peering out into the darkness. It's Olivia, he whispered, his face pale in the dim light. She followed you. My heart stopped as Jason's words registered. Olivia. Here. Now. Hide, I hissed, pushing him toward the small storage closet. She can't find us here together. Mel, no. Go, I insisted. If she sees us both, everything falls apart. We lose our advantage. Reluctantly, Jason retreated into the closet just as the boathouse door swung open. Olivia stood silhouetted against the night sky, her expression a mixture of triumph and rage. Well, well, she said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. Isn't this cozy? My sister, alone in our family's boathouse, surrounded by, what exactly? Financial records? Audit reports? I stood my ground, mentally calculating how much she might have seen, might have heard. What are you doing here, Olivia? I could ask you the same question. She moved further into the room, eyes darting around suspiciously. But I think I already know the answer. You've been investigating me. Yes, I admitted, seeing no point in denying the obvious. I have. Why? She demanded. What have I ever done to deserve this invasion of privacy? This betrayal of trust? I almost laughed at the irony. Betrayal of trust? That's rich, coming from you. Is this about Jason? Her voice rose. Are you really so petty, so vindictive that you'd try to destroy my life because I fell in love with your husband? This has nothing to do with Jason, I replied evenly. This is about the $750,000 you've stolen from our family's company. Olivia blinked, momentarily thrown off guard. Then her expression shifted, a calculating look replacing the righteous indignation. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, I countered, gesturing to the papers spread across the table. Blue Horizon Partners? Offshore accounts? Falsified board approvals? Any of this sounding familiar? She crossed her arms, defiant. Those are legitimate business expenses. Investment opportunities that required discretion. Discretion. Is that what you call fraud these days? You don't understand business, Melanie. You never have. That's why Dad gave me the financial reins, not you. Dad gave you those responsibilities because he trusted you, I shot back. We all did. And you abused that trust to line your own pockets. For a moment, something like shame flickered across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by cold determination. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I moved toward the table, gathering the most damning documents. Copies of transfers with your signature. Board minutes you altered. Bank statements from accounts registered in your name. It's over, Olivia. She lunged forward suddenly, grabbing at the papers in my hand. Give me those. We struggled briefly, documents scattering across the floor. In the chaos, I saw her eyes widen as she focused on something behind me. You're not alone, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Who's here with you, Melanie? Before I could respond, the closet door creaked open, and Jason stepped out. Olivia froze, her expression cycling through confusion, realization, and finally, murderous rage. You, she breathed. Both of you. Together. Olivia, Jason began, his hands raised in a placating gesture. We can explain. Explain, she echoed, her voice rising hysterically. Explain what? That my sister and her husband have been lying to me? That this whole engagement has been a sham? Some twisted plot to, what? Catch me embezzling? Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what it was. Olivia stared at me, her face contorting with fury. You manipulative bitch. Says the woman who pretended to fall in love with her sister's husband as a distraction from her financial crimes. She shook her head violently. No. No, that wasn't. I really do love Jason. This isn't about money. Isn't it? I challenged. The timing is awfully convenient, Olivia. You mysteriously develop feelings for Jason right around the time I mention wanting a full audit of the company's finances. That's not, she began, then stopped, her gaze shifting to Jason. Tell her, Jason. Tell her how we've always had a connection. How you were never truly happy with her. Jason moved to stand beside me, his shoulder pressed against mine in a united front. There was never anything between us, Olivia, he said gently. I've always loved Melanie. I agreed to this charade to help her uncover the truth about what you've been doing. The devastation on her face was almost painful to witness. For a moment, I felt a twinge of pity for my sister, the perpetual second best, always in my shadow, always striving to outshine me. But then I remembered the casual cruelty with which she had announced their engagement. The smug satisfaction in her eyes when she thought she had finally won. The years of systematic theft from our family. "It's over, Olivia," I said firmly. "Tomorrow, we're taking everything to Dad, to the board. After that, it's out of our hands." She stared at us, her breathing shallow, her hands clenched at her sides. "You're bluffing," she finally said. "You wouldn't do that to me. To your own sister." "You left me no choice," I replied. "You stole from our family. You tried to steal my husband. Actions have consequences." "Fine," she snapped, her composure cracking. "Go ahead. Tell Dad, tell the board. Tell the whole world. But remember this, Melanie, when it all comes crashing down, when our parents are humiliated, when the company's reputation is in tatters, that's on you. Not me." With that, she turned and stormed out, leaving Jason and me alone in the suddenly silent boathouse. "She's going to run," Jason said grimly. "Or destroy whatever evidence she can still access." I nodded, already reaching for my phone. "I know. That's why I'm calling Dad now. We can't wait until morning." As I dialed the familiar number, I braced myself for what was to come. The shock, the disbelief, the devastating betrayal my parents would feel when they learned the truth about their younger daughter. And about the elaborate deception their older daughter had engineered to expose her. "Dad?" I said when he answered. "I need to see you right away. It's about Olivia. And it can't wait." The sun was just beginning to rise as Jason and I pulled into my parents' driveway, casting a soft golden glow over the house I'd grown up in. Dad was waiting for us on the porch, his face etched with worry. Mom stood beside him, clutching her robe tightly around herself. "Melanie," Dad called as we approached. "What's going on?" "And Jason? I don't understand." "We need to talk, Dad," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "All of us." Mom's eyes widened as she took in the sight of Jason and me, arriving together, standing close. "But I thought," Olivia said. She stammered, confusion evident in her voice. "That's part of what we need to discuss," Jason said gently. "May we come in?" Inside, we gathered around the dining table, the same table where our family had shared countless meals, celebrations, and difficult conversations over the years. This would be perhaps the most difficult of all. 400. I placed the folder of evidence on the table, sliding it toward my father. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. "What am I looking at, Melanie?" he asked, though his ashen face suggested he already knew. "Financial records. Bank transfers. Board minutes that were altered." I took a deep breath. Proof that Olivia has been systematically embezzling from the company for years. Mom let out a small, wounded sound. "That can't be right." "I wish it wasn't," I said softly. "But it's all there." Dad flipped through the documents, his expression growing more grim with each page. "And you and Jason?" "I don't understand," Olivia said. "It was a deception," Jason explained. "When Melanie first suspected what Olivia was doing, she came to me. We realized that if Olivia thought we were separated, if she believed she had finally won by taking Jason from me, she might get careless," I finished. "Lower her guard." Which she did. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "So the engagement was never real," Jason confirmed. "I've always loved Melanie. That never changed." A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the sound of my father shuffling through the damning evidence of his younger daughter's betrayal. "Where is Olivia now?" he finally asked, his voice thick with emotion. "We don't know," I admitted. "She confronted us last night at the boathouse. She knows we have proof." "You think she'll run?" Dad stated, not a question. I nodded. "Or destroy whatever evidence remains. That's why we couldn't wait." Dad stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I need to call the police. The board. Our lawyers." He paused, looking at me with a mixture of pride and profound sadness. "You did the right thing, Melanie. As painful as this is, the truth needed to come out." As he left the room, Mom reached across the table to take my hand. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. For doubting you. For thinking that Jason and Olivia." "It's okay, Mom," I assured her. "We fooled everyone. That was the point." Outside, the morning light grew stronger, illuminating the beginning of a new day, and the end of the secrets that had threatened to tear our family apart.